What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today, I am continuing my Fast and Furious rewatch and reviews, and I am up to part 4, Fast and Furious from 2009. This was a big deal because this was everybody from the original coming back together again for another movie. And we're not worrying about Tokyo Drift. We're even bringing back characters that died from that one and getting kind of crazy. And this one, in my personal opinion, is the worst movie in the franchise. Now, before we get into everything, just want to let you guys know up at the top, this will have some spoilers. So if you have not seen Fast and Furious, definitely check it out. Then come back and listen to the review. And we shall continue. So yeah, with Fast and Furious, like I said, this is a reunion of sorts because we have Vin Diesel, Paul Walker, Michelle Rodriguez, and Jordana Brewster all coming back from the original movie. Now they're all back here once again after part 2 only having Paul Walker, and then part 3 having none of them, with the exception of Vin Diesel making a cameo at the end of that movie. This is bringing the gang back together, and it couldn't be a bigger disappointment. I mean, this one on paper had what should have been one of the better entries in the series, but to me, it just doesn't work all that well in comparison to where we get in the next movie and where the series continues on from here for the most part. With this one, like I said, we're bringing back everybody. Paul Walker is now back as an officer, and he is going undercover once again. Who would have thought? And that's one of the reasons this movie doesn't work, is we're doing this. He's going undercover as a street racer for the 3rd time. He's been in 3 of these movies, and he's going undercover again. And I know he's an undercover police officer, but it's like, come up with something else, which is why I think the next movie gets it right. But we'll get to that when we get to that review. But anyway, he goes undercover to try to infiltrate a new crime boss named Braga. And like I said, he's going undercover to be a street racer, while simultaneously Vin Diesel is back as Dominic Toretto, and he is also trying to get on the same team that Braga. He's basically getting all these street racers together, and Dom is also trying to be a part of that because he's trying to infiltrate them to find out who killed Letty. Because yes, at the beginning of this movie, maybe about 15 minutes into it, Michelle Rodriguez's character gets killed off, but not for too long because she's back in part 6, and we'll address that later. But yeah, this is, we've got these 2 guys coming back together who had, good chemistry in that first movie. They worked well together. Here, it just doesn't feel like everybody's into this, despite everybody wanting to come back for this movie. And this is the one that actually kind of set in motion the rest of the series, because this one also ramps up the action. It ramps up the ridiculous stunts that this series has now become known for. Yeah, there's some crazy stunts in those first 3 movies, but here it gets ramped up very high. And even with the very first sequence in the movie, the action sequence there is just insane. And from there on out, it just gets crazier and crazier. Now, like I said at the top of this review, you're also bringing back characters from previous movies who died, because this movie takes place after Too Fast, Too Furious and before Tokyo Drift. So yes, we're retconning that Han died. So now he's in this movie, and he's part of Dom's crew at the beginning of the movie. This also is the introduction of Santos and Leo, played by Don Omar and Tego Calderon. Despite in this movie, their names are just their names in real life, Don and Tego, but somehow in part 5, they become Santos and Leo. But they're kind of funny characters. They just speak Spanish the entire time, but their dynamic and back and forth and everything is pretty funny, and I like them in the movies that they pop up in this series. But they're more or less throwaway characters at the end of the day. Now, when it comes to everybody else here, like I said, Paul Walker and Vin Diesel, they're doing a fine job and everything. They're definitely back into these characters, but it just doesn't feel like the magic is there again. And I don't know if it's necessarily just the story behind this one, or the writing here in most of these movies isn't always that great, but here it just feels like it's very underwhelming. This should have been a bigger deal, and at the box office it was. This movie made a huge splash. It basically made more than Tokyo Drift made in its entire run in like 1 or 2 weekends, which is saying a lot. So this got the series back on track, but the movie itself just doesn't feel all that worthy. And like I said, to me, it's one of the less, no, it's the worst in the series. I already said it. I'll go ahead and say it again. It's the absolute worst in the series. And I think one of the aspects of it is because this one plays things way too seriously. Yeah, I know that first movie was a bit more serious, but it had some fun. There's definitely some funny moments intentionally and unintentionally. But it had a good mixture of just fun, entertaining action, mixed in with some, dramatic elements. This movie just feels like it's all drama from start to finish. Yeah, there's a couple of decent action sequences, a couple of okay races and whatnot. But on the whole, it just doesn't feel like much of a Fast and Furious movie to me. Yeah, you're bringing back these characters that are so beloved by the fans, but they're not really doing a whole lot to make it worthwhile. They kill Michelle Rodriguez 15 minutes into the movie. She only gets to interact with Dominic Toretto, and she never once gets to interact with Paul Walker or Jordana Brewster. And then Jordana Brewster's here, and she is completely wasted. She doesn't get to do anything. At the end, she finally gets to drive a car again, and I guess that's something. But this just feels like a big swing and a miss. Like, this had the potential to be so much more than it was, and ultimately it just didn't really work. It's one of the lowest rated in the series. I think it actually has, if you're into Rotten Tomatoes and all that, it actually has the lowest tomato score out of any of the movies, if I'm not mistaken. And it's within reason, because this just doesn't have as much fun and it's not as entertaining as the other entries in this series. And if you like it, by all means, you're more than welcome to enjoy it. There are some things here and some elements to it that actually do work, but for the majority, it just, there's not enough here for me to really like it. When I do my rewatches, when a new entry comes out, this is the one I always dread watching because I just don't have a good time with it. And, it doesn't help too that along with everyone feeling like they're not really interested in being there, this one also has one of the lesser villains too, which I've kind of said that on all of these, but the villains are definitely not the strong suit for this series. And here you have Braga, who is played by John Ortiz, who I don't think is doing all that good of a job here. And the whole twist that he's a different character and you're never sure if you're ever going to meet Braga, and then at the end it ends up turning out, oh, it's actually him this whole time. That is stupid. They should have never done that, because it's blatantly obvious from his introduction that he is Braga. So the fact they play it up for a twist is just ridiculous. This one also too is where the series starts to get really CG heavy in some of the action. There is a lot of practical effects here, which are nice to see, but this one gets very CG heavy because there's a lot of desert and shots where they go under these tunnels, under like a mountain, and all of that just looks atrocious. You can barely tell what's going on. The editing is so choppy. It's quick cuts constantly. So you don't really know what's happening. You don't know which car is which until they zoom in and like, oh, hey, that's Brian. Oh, hey, that's Dominic. Oh, hey, this is whoever. And it's just too much. Like they should have went simpler with this one. I know from here on out, the franchise gets bigger and bolder with the action set pieces, but none of the set pieces here are all that enjoyable just because of how clunky and choppily edited everything is. And it's a shame because, I think after this movie, the series gets into its peak. And like I said, we'll get into that when we get to those movies. But here, this is just ultimately a big disappointment for me. Overall, I would give this a 4 out of 10. like I said, to me, it is the worst in the series. It just doesn't do it for me. There's not enough here to make it all that enjoyable. There are some moments here and there that do work. It is nice to see this cast all back in the same movie again, but I wish they would have actually given them something to do together instead of killing one of them off so early and then not really even doing a whole lot with some of the other ones. It's nice to see Han back, but he basically is barely in this movie, and he's kind of in the movie for no reason for them to go out of their way to retcon his death from the last one. He's just there to be there. You also have the addition of Gal Gadot as Giselle that I didn't mention. She kind of isn't really doing a whole lot here either. She gets more to do in the next couple movies. And they actually say her name in those movies, where in this one she's introduced and not once does anybody ever say her name in this movie. And to me, that's insane, to build her up to be this character that's going to continue on and then not even let us know who she actually is. That's about it for me, guys. If you have seen Fast and Furious, please let me know what you thought about it in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe to the channel for more reviews. I will leave all my links down below on where you can follow me and check out more of my reviews. And until next time, I will catch you all later.